So you mean to tell me that this guy just came up to you and randomly gave you a set of keys that when you use magically makes you the better version of yourself?
I don't care if you believe me, the keys are magical.
And you don't think that it's a little bit on the nose that this just happens to happen when we're about to review a game called Keyflower?
Well, if you don't want them, then I'll have them back.
No, I'll try them out. Coming back from the shops to buy some Bisto gravy. I guess Bisto doesn't open doors. Oh no, that's just not gonna end well. Oh no. Right now, you're thinking one of two things. You're either going, Keyflower, or, which, if you've never heard of it before, is a perfectly understandable reaction to a cover like this, with a name like this. But did you know that Keyflower is just one of the series, in a whole series of key games, starting with Keywood Keydom, which is largely attributed as the very first worker placement game, and incredibly out of print, and a copy just last week sold on eBay for nearly 500 quid. Key Town, Cathedral, Key Market, Key Harvest, Key to the City of London, and Key Largo, and of course everyone's favourite, Honey, I Shrunk the Keys. It happened so many times, doesn't it? Just last week I'm like, where's my... I shrunk them. I shrunk the keys. In some ways, Keyflower is incredibly simple. You have tiles, they make wood, iron, and coal. The resources you make end up on your tiles, you then load them up into a metaphorical wagon and cart them around until they are at the right place to upgrade a tile. The upgraded tile is then, well, upgraded, which is to say it does the thing that it does better, but most importantly, that tile will now score points. And then you visit your local points office and redeem those points for prizes. Look, I'm not gonna lie to you. Board games have been doing this whole coal, iron, and wood shtick for a very shtick time, and I can't blame you if you just can't get excited about coal, iron, and wood. But sometimes it's okay to make a tired old joke, especially one that's really hard to avoid. And sometimes it's okay to do a jump cut, and sometimes it's okay to make a game about converting basic resources, as long as the rest of that game is interesting. Remember all these tiles that you have that make things that then you transport to other tiles and then you upgrade them and flip them over and they score you points? Well, the trick is, you don't have any. All you have is this one single tile with a donkey on it that lets you cart things around very, very slowly because the donkey's tired. Here's the thing. As thin as this game's theme is, you are, after all, a pilgrim on a voyage to a new country, and your job is to establish that new country, so it is natural that all you start with is a tired old donkey to your name. The way you get those tiles is through auctions, and there's an auction for every single individual tile. And the way you bid in those auctions is by spending workers of different color, and once one color has been assigned to a tile, no longer any workers of a different color for some reason can't work or participate in an auction on that tile. At the start of the game, you will draw 8 workers blindly from a bag, and they could be any of the 3 different colors, and ignoring the exceedingly unlikely event that all the workers you drew are of the same color, you'll eye up the tiles you want to snatch and then have some interesting decisions to make. Let's say that these are the workers you ended up with. Any tile you want to win, you have to bid on, but opening up a bid with red in this situation is silly because as soon as someone outbids you with 2, there's no way you can up your bid to 3 and keep contesting that tile. You have an equal amount of blue and yellow, so the only thing you have to do now is figure out how many blue or yellow meeples your opponents have. Just like whether darts is really a sport or the whole God microwaving a burrito thing, we will never know, at least in the first round. But as the rounds continue, the whole colored meeple thing becomes a very complicated matter. Because, and this is a bit of a tangent, so bear with me, on your turn you can do not one, but one of 2 different things. You can either bid on a tile like I've just previously described, or you can place a meeple on a tile as a worker and do the thing that that tile does.
But the kicker being that you don't have to place meat workers on tiles that you own. You can literally place workers on any tiles on the table, meaning yes, the ones you are currently bidding for, but also the ones that your opponents control. So if I wanted a piece of wood, I could go and place a meeple there and place a wood there, but it doesn't even lock that tile out because anyone else can place meeples on that tile again, as long as you're placing more than are already placed on there, and as long as the total of meeples doesn't exceed 6. But to make this really, really complicated, is anyone who wins a tile that has workers on it, or just owns the tile that has workers on it, at the end of the round, all the meeples on that tile will go to them. And this right here is the key element of the game, because these meeples, these workers, they are the driving force of the economy. They unlock the door to anything that your heart might desire, such as a cool tile that gives you a unique special ability that, for example, says, hey, I can ignore colors when bidding on tiles, or a tile that gives you an altogether new color of worker, green, that is hard to acquire. And then if you have a green worker, you can go, well, I want this tile, I'll bid on it. Do you have green workers? No, well, that tile's mine. And in fact, sometimes you'll bid on a tile that you don't even want, that doesn't go with your strategy, but you want to have it because you know it's a good tile and people will put their workers on it, and at the end of the round, you will be able to claim those workers for yourself.
Let me say this once so that there is no doubt. Keyflower is a clever game. It is not just an auction mechanism slapped together with resource conversion, but where those key elements meet together, the mess that they create in your head takes skill to navigate and feels very, very good. But Keyflower, like most games we review, has a couple of problems. First, Seasoned Carboaters will tell you that Keyflower right now is the 38th best game of all time, according to Board Game Geek's users. I would argue, however, that it hasn't aged that well. Look, I know I'm about to contradict what I've just said in the previous scene, that Keyflower is more than the sum of its parts, but in my opinion, neither of those parts individually are as good. And whilst I can still appreciate how clever that intersection is, it does leave me wanting. And it's not really the game's fault, it's just a fault of time.
Converting resources into points is to board games as beef is to hamburgers. It's meaty, it's what gets people to buy them, and let's face it, to most of us, it's delicious. But Keyflower is 5 years old, and if Mackie D can get away with a 5-year-old hamburger looking just the same as it did on its birthing day, well, as soon as you touch it, it just feels a bit stiff and lifeless.
And honestly, I love the auctioning part. Every time you put a meeple down, you whisper sweet nothings to the spirits of fate just to leave your tile alone. And every so often, someone's just gonna blow their load of meeples on a tile that isn't even that good. And perhaps tension got to them and they misfired, or they thought they spotted something that's genius. And whilst you know what they did is folly, but you can't help and admire the bravado. It's not a game that's going to turn your table into a riotous caucus, but it is a game that will make your friends go, I see what you did there, more times than appropriate.
But, there's a reason auctions are held in a single currency. Just imagine an actual auction where you handed 3 suitcases, one of them containing dollars, another containing yen, and the third one containing rubles. It's so confusing. And just imagine that at the end of the round, all the money that was bid is going to be pulled together and redistributed back to people. It's just weird. And do you know who's going to come away best in that auction? The person with eidetic memory. And I've heard stories of people playing Keyflower with live spreadsheets, and that sounds ludicrous. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm kind of enamored by the idea of playing Keyflower with a spreadsheet. But let's face it, I can't really recommend that, can I? Over another different auction game, and there are many out there, where you're just basing your decisions on gut feeling, and it just feels so much better.
So who is Keyflower for? Well, most Eurogamers, as it turns out, because it is still a fine game, and as a piece of modern board game history, it is well worth exploring. It's made its mark, and it made that mark for a reason. But if you are new to this hobby and you're looking for an engrossing game with endless strategies, just last year we had Great Western Trail, and I couldn't think of a more fantastic recommendation. And if you're really into converting coal, iron and wood, you can play around with those resources in last year's Feast for Odin as well. A very big box with very many things inside. But if you're on a budget and you're really looking for a game that meshes worker placement together with auctioning, Keyflower is only 40 quid. And it's got 2 expansions. In last week's video, someone in the comments complained that I eat too many wooden components. I just have to say, I take that sort of criticism very seriously.
How many of those have you eaten? Not actually edible.
I'd say it's 120.